Hey guys, tonight we're slipping quietly into the warm, murmuring world of ancient Rome. Not into a war, a debate, or a forum, but into something much more relaxing, the Roman public bathhouse. Picture it now, polished marble underfoot, steam curling like lazy serpents through high-arched ceilings, and everywhere around you the soft splash of water and low voices weaving their way through scented air. The lighting is dim, flickering from oil lamps. The smell is a blend of herbs, salt, and a faint undertone of Wells people. You enter slowly, your sandals slapping damp stone. The bathhouse is already busy. Not rowdy busy, this isn't the Colosseum, but a kind of low-hum buzz as locals shuffle between rooms, chatter lazily, and take their time doing everything. You're just one more toga-clad shape in this marble maze of mild activity. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. Maybe you're winding down after work in Ohio, or falling asleep on a train in Jakarta. Either way, it's nice to have you here. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You trudge through the frigidarium first, the cold room. It's brisk, almost enough to make your teeth chatter, but the air is fresh and tingling on your skin. You pass a man slowly lowering himself into a shallow, cold pool, muttering dramatic regrets about his life choices. A fellow bather nearby gently laughs and mutters, "Should have started in the tepidarium." You nod sagely, pretending you know what you're doing. There's a rhythm to this place. First, you strip down, yes, everything, but don't worry, everyone else does too. You hand your clothes to an attendant, one of the young enslaved workers assigned to keep track of personal belongings. His expression is equal parts boredom and resignation. These lockers, if you can call them that, are shelves and niches in the walls, terribly organized if you're being honest. No numbers, no keys. Just a vague hope your sandals won't be stolen by someone who wears the same size. The bathhouse has been called the great equalizer of Roman life. Sure, there are elite-only options for the very wealthy, but for the rest of Rome, this is where senators and bakers soak in the same water. You could bump elbows with a military commander while adjusting your towel, or find yourself chatting about lentil prices with the man who mints your coins. One scholar once noted that the real power of the Roman bath was its soft civic magic, the way it turned strangers into conversational partners and offered every citizen, no matter how dusty their sandals, a moment of pure, shared indulgence. The floors are warm underfoot thanks to a hypocaust system, a brilliant Roman invention where hot air travels under the floors and inside the walls. You feel it rise through your soles, toasty, calming, a bit like sliding into heated slippers made of stone. As you wander toward the tepidarium, the warm room, you start hearing snippets of conversation. A man sighs about his latest business venture in olive oil exports. Another grumbles that his favorite sponge-on-a-stick has gone missing. That's the Roman version of a loofah, by the way. They call it a tersorium. You make a mental note not to borrow anyone else's. The air thickens with steam. In the corner, a woman is quietly lecturing her younger sister about which toga color attracts the best suitors. Historians still argue whether bright saffron or soft lilac was more fashionable, she insists, smoothing her already perfect hair. You continue deeper. An older man is explaining to a sleepy-eyed teenager how to avoid athlete's foot by rotating sandals. Is that sound medical advice? Who knows? But he says it with such certainty that it must be true. This isn't just bathing. This is a full-body social immersion. There are attendants rubbing oil on limbs, scraping it off with curved metal tools called strigils. The sound is faint, like someone whisking eggs very slowly. You try not to look directly at anyone, but you can't help noticing one older lady wears jewelry even in the steam. A tiny emerald glints from her toe ring. She's clearly not here to rush. Roman bathhouses had a strange dual personality, part spa, part community center, and part social media feed. This is where news traveled, rumors germinated, and fortunes were subtly made or undone. In one corner, a group of men is talking, softly but pointedly, about a local senator whose toga came untied during a temple ceremony. It was not just untied, one whispers, eyes wide. It was backwards. You gasp inwardly. The scandal. A backwards toga could ruin you. A young boy rushes past with a tray of scented oils, probably rose, or maybe lavender, imported from the far-off provinces. He smells better than anyone should after running through steam. You finally ease into a shallow basin, lukewarm and glorious. The tile beneath you is patterned in tiny fish. It's quiet here. Only the distant plink of dripping water and the faint wheeze of a man trying to explain the difference between Greek and Roman wine philosophies. One fringe theory says bathhouses were designed not just for hygiene but for information flow. Like ancient whisper networks, they carried rumors, political shifts, and subtle manipulations through steam-soaked walls. It's plausible. Where else would someone feel relaxed enough to admit their cousin faked an inheritance? You close your eyes just for a second. A woman next to you is describing a dream she had where the goddess Minerva scolded her for being late to the forum. No one questions this. Someone else nods slowly and says, "That sounds like Minerva all right." You sigh, your shoulders finally slumping. Welcome to the bathhouse, where nobody rushes, nobody shouts, and even the soap has opinions. You shuffle out of the tepidarium, your skin glistening with moisture and pores wide open like sleepy sunflowers. There's a pause in the air as you pass through a corridor, narrow, slightly cooler, the sound of dripping water echoing with soft patience. Around the next corner, you find the apoditerium, the changing area, which might sound mundane, but oh, the quiet theatrics that take place here. The room is long and slightly domed, lined with stone benches and wall niches meant for clothing and personal effects. There's no formal system, no tidy baskets or numbered pegs, just the Roman version of hope for the best. People mill about in various stages of undress, chatting idly, adjusting tunics, or scanning the shelves with mild panic. One man hovers in front of a cubbyhole, holding a sandal that looks suspiciously like his, but also doesn't. He looks up at you and shrugs. Close enough. Locker room etiquette in ancient Rome is a subtle art. For instance, it's considered rude to linger too long while changing. No one wants a bottleneck of naked philosophers. And it's frowned upon to loudly criticize someone else's toga folding skills, even if their pleats are a chaotic disgrace. You find a quiet spot on the bench and begin the slow, practiced art of towel rewrapping. A pair of elderly bathers nearby are deep in whispered debate about the right order of bathing. Should one oil before or after the caldarium? Does it change the texture of your skin if you invert the routine? Historians still argue whether Romans had a consistent sequence. One of them mutters while adjusting his sandal strap with surgical precision. You hear a stifled giggle from a nearby group. One woman is describing how her husband left his sandals here last week, and when he returned, someone had swapped them out for a much smaller pair, with flower engravings. He wore them home out of stubborn pride and now claims they cured his back pain. She rolls her eyes, but there's affection in her tone. You smile and make a mental note that sandal swapping is apparently the Roman equivalent of passive-aggressive gossip. A teenage boy nearby is panicking. "Where's my belt? Someone's taken my belt," he wails, clutching his tunic like it might suddenly fly off. An older man shakes his head knowingly. "This is why I always wear a backup rope." You suspect he says this a lot, perhaps with increasing smugness each time. In a corner, a slave boy is carefully folding someone's tunic, smoothing each crease with reverence. This isn't just about tidiness, it's performance. In the upper circles, your toga's fold quality might say more about you than your family crest. You recall hearing that Emperor Hadrian once commented on a senator's toga as more wrinkled than his arguments. There's a row of bronze mirrors hanging near the wall, just high enough to encourage awkward posture. You catch sight of yourself, steamed, slightly red from the heat and strangely proud. You look like you belong here now, like someone who might have casual opinions about strigil metals. Nearby, two women sit side by side, wrapping their hair in damp cloth. One sighs, "My neighbor keeps using my oil flask. She says it's communal like the Republic." The other snorts softly, "So is the grain dole. Doesn't mean I want her fingers in it." You hear the sharp, metallic scrape of a strigil again, and a very relaxed voice say, "I swear by Jupiter this new oil smells like donkey butter." Another murmurs in agreement, "It probably is." There's no rush to leave, no pressure to move on. In the apoditarium, time stretches like warm wax. The clothing etiquette is not without layers, both literally and socially. While men might go fully nude in the baths, women often wore a strophium, a type of cloth bra, or a simple tunic that could get wet. Modesty was a flexible concept in Rome, bending politely for convenience but never snapping entirely. One man boasts that he's managed to keep his tunic white even after 3 bath visits. This is clearly fiction. His friend nods solemnly and says, "Teach me, O sage of laundry." There is gentle sarcasm in every syllable. You can't help but chuckle. You notice someone carefully dusting their sandals with powdered chalk, a neat trick, you're told, to prevent slipping on wet stone. Another bath-goer leans in and whispers, "That's the same guy who claims he once sneezed on Emperor Trajan." A quiet pause, then, twice. Etiquette debates extend to personal grooming, too. Some believe shaving before a bath shows respect for others. Others argue a bit of stubble is perfectly acceptable, like seasoning on a roast. As always, scholars remain divided. One fringe opinion insists that beards were once taxed depending on their length, but no one can find the actual edict. Still, it makes for great towel-side speculation. In a quieter corner, someone is recounting a tale of how he wore mismatched shoes to a Saturnalia party and was scolded by a man dressed as a goat. You're not sure if this story is true, or if it's a strange kind of bathhouse folk tale. Either way, everyone nods along as though it's a parable. You begin to notice that time works differently here. It has the shape of steam, thick, lazy, impossible to grasp. Nobody checks sundials. Nobody hurries. Even the attendants glide from one end of the room to the other like soft ghosts, carrying oils, towels, and trays of dried figs. A boy walks past with a tray of honeyed almonds. He offers you one with a knowing smile and says, "Don't worry, I didn't touch them this time." You take one. It's sticky, sweet, and weirdly comforting. You've earned it. Back near the shelves, a man is humming to himself while tying a belt around his waist with theatrical flair. Someone claps politely. He bows. You begin to feel the rhythm of the place in your bones. A flow, bath, rest, gossip, oil, repeat. It's a gentle kind of choreography, wrapped in linen and punctuated by soft laughter. Someone stands up and stretches, yawning, off to the caldarium. "If I'm not back in an hour, assume I melted." Everyone waves lazily. You look around once more before moving on. The apoditarium has given you more than dry sandals and a wrinkle-free tunic. It's given you a sense of belonging, of knowing that here in the warm stone belly of Rome, the greatest scandal of the day might just be a missing belt. You make your way slowly toward the caldarium, the hot room, where the heat thickens into something that could almost be chewed. The shift in temperature is immediate. The air feels like it's been gently ironed and pressed against your face. Steam curls through stone arches, pooling around your ankles and wrists like fog trying to give you a hug. You pass through a narrow archway into the chamber, and the walls, slick with condensation, gleam in the flickering lamplight. The scent here is sharper, eucalyptus maybe, or some resin someone swore would clear the sinuses of a dying ox. You take a deep breath anyway. It's oddly satisfying, like breathing in soup. The caldarium is built for soaking and sweating, mainly the latter. There's a hot plunge pool tiled with little dolphins bubbling faintly from the heat below. A few figures lounge there like lazy deities. Steam clings to them like gauze. You slip in as quietly as you can, but the moment your foot touches the water, your body gives an involuntary gasp. It's like being slowly poached. Across from you, three older men are deep in conversation. Low voices, raised brows, towel-draped wisdom. Their trading takes on the latest public games and more specifically the gladiators. Cashin the Red could wrestle a boar with one hand, says one. Another snorts, he couldn't even wrestle his own ego. The third murmurs, didn't he trip over a helmet last week? They all nod, solemn as magistrates passing judgment. Gladiator gossip is a major genre in these walls. Everyone's got a favorite, a story, or a vague cousin who once sold olives to one. You pick up pieces of conversations. Who retired early, who switched trainers, who might have faked an injury to get out of a match against a Thracian with a mean left hook. Someone behind you whispers, historians still argue whether female gladiators were ever allowed in major venues. Another replies, they were, I saw one, she beat my uncle, he was the vendor. You lean back against the tile, eyes closed now, letting the voices swirl around you like the steam. They're not just talking about fights, they're talking about personalities. One man describes a charioteer who only eats lentils. Another is convinced his favorite Ricciarius, those were the ones with nets, can read minds. He knew where the guy was going to dodge, I swear, must be part oracle. The Bathhouse isn't interested in cold facts. It wants the warmth of opinion, of soft conspiracy, of my cousin saw it with his own eyes. You drift along with it, catching phrases like fish in a net. Terrible with the trident. His beard was fake. He blinked during the salute. You open your eyes again and see two women lounging by the edge of the hot pool, their hair up in careful braids. One is drawing a gladiator's profile in the condensation on the wall with her finger. He looked like this, she whispers, only with more scars and less neck. The other nods seriously. He sounds dreamy. There's something gently humorous about the way everyone is so invested in these minor details. A man with a scroll insists that a certain charioteer's new horse is cursed because it sneezed before a race. A bath attendant passing by mutters, that's just hay dust. The man glares. It's always hay dust until it's sabotage. A fringe theory emerges that the helmets are getting heavier to make certain matches more dramatic. Another bath-goer raises an eyebrow and says, or maybe you're just getting older. There's a moment of silence, then laughter. Even the walls seem to sweat in agreement. You ease out of the water for a moment, sit on the edge, and let the steam soften your skin like bread dough. Across the room, a boy no older than 15 is holding court, explaining how he once caught a glimpse of a retired gladiator running a cheese stall outside the city. He wears an apron like a breastplate, the boy says proudly. Still has the scar, though. It's not all admiration, there's teasing, too. You know Decimus the Tall, I heard he uses padding in his greaves. Someone gasps. Another says, explains the suspicious calf muscles. But it's all in good fun. Gladiators were celebrities, sure, but also human. And the bathhouse is where the shine comes off just enough to be funny. You reach for a ladle near the pool's edge, carved from olive wood, and pour hot water gently over your shoulders. It's an old ritual. Some say it prevents muscle cramps. Others say it just feels nice. You suspect both are true. Someone behind you quietly hums a familiar tune, something from a chariot race anthem. His voice is off-key, but no one tells him to stop. It echoes through the steam like a lullaby half-remembered. You glance to the side where someone is inscribing initials on a water-warped bench. Probably a couple, now separated by fate, poor decisions, or a poorly cooked dormouse. V+M, it says. Forever or until the wax runs out. You notice one older bather quietly dozing, his head bobbing like a buoy. Next to him, a young woman dips her hand into the pool and says, "It's not as hot as last week." Someone responds, "That's because last week they accidentally stoked the fire with amphora shards." Ah yes, Rome, where recycling and chaos blend seamlessly. A small group starts a quiet conversation about which gladiator once accidentally saluted the wrong emperor. It was dark, someone offers, and he had poor eyesight. Still, the embarrassment echoes. And then there's a man in the corner, whispering a dramatic tale of a match that ended with both fighters throwing down their weapons and walking out arm in arm. A protest, he says. Or maybe they were just tired. Theories abound. Steam beads drip from the ceiling like a slow, thoughtful clock. You can't tell how long you've been here. That's the point. You lean back into the heat again, letting the voices blur together until they sound like distant lullabies. The water swirls around your fingertips. And the gossip, it's still going strong. In Rome, hot takes are best served with steam. You finally peel yourself from the warm, dreamy grip of the caldarium, a bit prunny and flushed in that dignified, nearly boiled patrician way. The heat still clings to your skin like a borrowed robe. As you pat yourself down with a linen towel, soft but slightly overused, you wander back into the more temperate corridors of the bathhouse, steam trailing from your hair like a slow-motion ghost. The whispers in the air change tone, like the gentle flip of a scroll. Less about muscles and heat and more about relationships. Specifically the business, and it really is a business, of Roman marriages. You drift toward a shaded seating alcove lined with benches, and find yourself near a group of middle-aged women wrapped in modest tunics, fanning themselves with broad palm leaves and exchanging the gentlest of juicy details. He married her for the land, one says, nibbling a fig. Have you seen the soil in Etruria? Another hums. Better than marrying for the dowry and ending up with bad olives. They all nod, as if the horror of low-quality olives explains many of Rome's civil conflicts. Marriage in ancient Rome wasn't the candlelit affair modern cinema would have you believe. It was business, politics, property consolidation, and sometimes, just sometimes, affection. But Bathhouse gossip prefers the tangled, half-true tales that dance between the steam like mischievous spirits. You listen as someone recounts how Claudia Minor supposedly fainted at her own wedding, not out of nerves, but because the groom's breath was described as goat-withered. The phrase sticks in your mind like a burr. Another bather leans in conspiratorially. You know Gaius Lucius, married for the third time last week. His new wife owns 3 vineyards and a stubborn goose. There's a pause. The goose has seniority. You think of the odd laws you've heard surrounding Roman marriages. Like how a woman technically needed to be married for 10 months out of every year to keep her social status squeaky clean. Or how you could divorce your spouse just by announcing it in public. Standing here, among the echoes and palm leaves, that actually sounds kind of convenient. 2 men wrapped in towels drift by, their voices low. She brought 1,000 denarii to the union, and all he had was a toga with wine stains. The other shrugs. At least he brought personality. The bathhouse is a prime location for romantic analysis, not least because nobody's wearing much. You begin to realize that a lot of these whispers are observations in real time. Look at how he's oiling her shoulders. That's their 3rd visit this week. She brings her own strigil. That's commitment. They're using the same sponge. Must be serious. You let that last one sink in. An older man sits nearby, plucking imaginary lint from his towel, and starts telling a story about a bride who arrived to her wedding with the wrong veil. One dyed an unlucky shade of green. The priest's beard turned white that day, he says, deadpan. Historians still argue whether it was fear or fungus. Soft laughter ripples through the alcove. Someone offers dates from a small clay bowl, and you accept one politely. It tastes like syrupy history, sticky and comforting. You chew slowly as the conversation veers toward dowries. The real scandal, a woman whispers, is how she paid her dowry in pearls, then demanded them back during the divorce. You hear someone murmur, bold, I like her. One fringe tale drifts to your ears, possibly exaggerated, but delightfully so, about a man who tried to fake his own death to escape an engagement, only to be caught buying figs the next day. He claimed to be his twin, someone adds, except he didn't have one. You stretch your legs, listening to a conversation about a wedding feast that allegedly involved 12 courses and a manticore-shaped cake. Symbolic, a man says. Of what? No one knows, but it tasted like almonds. Across the room, two women are discussing name changes post-marriage. I kept mine, one says with the pride of a trailblazer. Easier to sign on amphora shipments. The other replies, I made mine longer, makes me sound wealthier. You nod slowly. Long names do seem to echo louder in marble halls. Someone nearby sighs. My cousin married a man who only owned one tunic. She thought it was romantic. Another voice chimes in, until she realized he also owned no soap. The talk turns to love spells, not just for fun, but apparently a real part of many relationships. Herbs tucked into sandals, whispers to Venus at dawn, odd symbols scratched into candles. Historians still debate how seriously these spells were taken, someone says. But my aunt swears hers made her husband sneeze every time he lied. The room settles into a gentle rhythm again. Towels are adjusted, sandals slipped back on, dates munched like it's a national sport. One young man mumbles about a woman he fancies who tends geese. She says I smell like figs. His friend claps him on the shoulder. Figs are desirable in some markets. A nearby conversation edges into romantic poetry of the more questionable kind. A woman recites, Thy nose like the noble aqueduct strong and never leaking. There's a pause, then applause. That's real love, someone says, dabbing their eyes with a damp sleeve. Eventually you rise, fingers sticky from fruit and heart light from the endless tales. Romance in Rome may be transactional, dramatic, and occasionally ruled by stubborn geese. But in the bathhouse, it's spoken of with the softness of steam and the hush of shared secrets. You walk on, your ears still ringing faintly with the words, He married her for her goats. You smile, honestly, seems fair. You pad quietly down a side corridor, passing a sleepy man humming to himself with a damp sponge in one hand and a half-eaten date in the other. You're not sure whether he's headed to bathe, snack, or philosophize. Possibly all three. Your own path, however, takes you to a quieter chamber near the palestra, the exercise yard that paradoxically is rarely exercised in by the regular bathhouse crowd. But next to it lies a small chamber where bathers sprawl lazily, fanning themselves and, of course, talking about food. You settle onto a warm bench, catching the aroma of something faintly garlicky trailing off someone's tunic. And right on cue, someone begins, I tried that new sauce from Campania, fermented fish and honey. A round of polite groans follows. It tasted like Neptune's armpit. Laughter ripples through the room like sunlight on mosaic tiles. Welcome to the soft world of Roman culinary chatter. This is less gourmet critique and more gentle disagreement over questionable flavor combinations. You overhear debates about whether garum, the infamous fermented fish sauce that Romans put on absolutely everything, actually tastes good, or whether it's simply tradition wrapped in fishy denial. Historians still argue whether garum was universally adored or quietly endured, says one man who is cradling a fig like it's a newborn. My mother put it on apples. Apples! He shudders dramatically. A woman nearby counters, garum is like marriage, not for everyone but better than starving. There's something comforting about this low-stakes culinary drama. A man unrolls a small scroll he carries around with his favorite bread recipes. Another swears that the best honey in the empire comes from bees that feed exclusively on lavender near Massilia. Bees with taste, he says. They hum in E minor. Someone asks if dormice are back in season. Only if you feed them acorns first, replies a serious voice. You want a nutty finish. One bather, clearly a bit of a culinary rebel, declares he's working on a new recipe. Boiled leeks with a drizzle of grape must and wait for it, no garum. The room gasps like a sponge dropped in cold water. "You'll get exiled," someone murmurs. He beams with pride. You overhear a couple gently arguing about cheese preferences. "Goat," she insists. "Sharp and reliable," he shrugs. "Cow, less drama." It's not a passionate fight, more a delicious lullaby of contrasting curd opinions. The conversation meanders to banquets. "Last one I attended had 14 courses," someone says, lying down flat on the bench. "I remember the first two, the rest became a philosophical experience." You can almost picture it. Silver platters, glistening meats, people falling asleep in their soup somewhere around course 10. Someone recalls a dish involving boiled ostrich and fruit. "Tasted like victory," they claim, or possibly defeat, hard to tell. A voice from the corner adds, "I once ate jellyfish at a senator's feast. It fought back." Murmurs of approval, "That's a good jellyfish." You try not to laugh too loudly as a man launches into a proud tale of how he cooked lentils using only solar heat, a bronze bowl, and his cousin's shaved head as a reflector. "It worked, mostly." Someone raises an eyebrow. "Mostly?" Well, the lentils were al dente, and his cousin still won't speak to him. Beyond the jokes, there's real reverence for food as daily poetry. A woman describes her mother's barley stew in hushed tones. "Warm, simple, smelled like home and time." There's a collective sigh, part nostalgia, part hunger. Someone breaks into soft humming, something that sounds vaguely like a lullaby about olives. Another starts rhythmically tapping two stones together, providing percussion. No one asks them to stop. In the Roman bathhouse, spontaneous food-themed performances are apparently not uncommon. A discussion begins about the strangest ingredient someone's ever seen in a dish. "Flamingo tongue," says one man proudly. "Imported, pink." Another shakes his head. "Peacock brain, I didn't ask questions." A woman tilts her head. "Raw snails soaked in milk." Everyone stares. "My uncle's recipe," she explains. "He was odd." Historians still debate whether those exotic recipes were widely eaten or just culinary theater for the elite, someone offers. "All I know is I spent a week chewing that snail." The younger bathers are less impressed by extravagance. One says he prefers chickpeas and onions. "Predictable, like a loyal friend, they never betray your stomach." A man nearby mutters, "Until they do." You close your eyes as someone begins a passionate ode to the joys of warm flatbread dipped in olive oil. Golden, crispy edges, a hint of rosemary, eaten with the sun on your back and no appointments until next week. Someone across the room nods deeply and says, "That's better than half the weddings I've been to." In a final burst of sleepy enthusiasm, a bather declares, "I'd trade my senator's seat for a lifetime supply of those stuffed grape leaves my aunt makes." Another replies, "You don't have a senator's seat." "Exactly, no risk." You rise slowly, limbs pleasantly heavy, your mind swirling with the sounds and smells of imagined feasts and condiment debates. The bathhouse, it turns out, is a five-star restaurant where nothing is actually served, but everything is lovingly described. You exit the chamber just as someone sighs, "If I die tomorrow, let it be after eating honey cakes." You nod in agreement, preferably warm, preferably with a fan gently blowing from the palestra. You wander leisurely through the next hallway, toes brushing over smooth, damp stone as you follow the low buzz of laughter and idle philosophizing. This room, the sudatorium or steam room, isn't as crowded, but the steam here is even thicker, like trying to breathe through a soft, wet curtain. And yet you press forward because you hear something interesting, something ridiculous. There, lounging on low benches and draped in towels that have seen better folds, are the bathhouse philosophers and casual thinkers. Not the elite academics with scrolls and lecture halls. No, these are the hobbyist historians, the self-appointed soothsayers, the cheerful skeptics of Rome. They've had just enough steam and figs to begin debating the nature of myths. You sit quietly near the entrance, allowing the mist to envelop your ears as the first whisper floats over. I'm telling you, unicorns are real. They just moved east. A chuckle follows, gentle and not unkind. So did my mother-in-law, doesn't make her a myth. The conversation circles around the usual suspects of Roman storytelling: gods, monsters, omens, and talking animals. One man squints through the steam. A centaur once gave me advice on leg cramps. Someone else leans forward. Was it good advice? I don't remember. He galloped off halfway through. The steam amplifies imagination. Suddenly, nothing is impossible, and everything is just plausible enough. Historians still argue whether Romans actually believed in household spirits, says a bather who looks like he's read 3 scrolls and misremembered most of them. My kitchen has one. It knocks over my oil flask when I'm ungrateful. A younger man pipes up. I saw a ghost once, wore a tunic from last season. Terrifying, someone whispers, out of style and translucent. A woman with a voice like velvet speaks from the shadows. I believe the gods walk among us. I saw a man charm a stray dog with a song. Or maybe he had snacks, a voice replies. She smiles. The line is thin. You notice one man vigorously defending the Hydra as a metaphor for bad debt. You cut off one loan, 2 more take its place. Everyone nods, deeply understanding this form of fiscal mythology. The conversation meanders through supernatural sightings, household omens, and the curious phenomenon of dreams that predict rain. Every time I dream of a goat with wings, it rains within 2 days, says a woman drying her feet with perfect conviction. Someone murmurs, that's oddly specific. A low-voiced elder, half napping in the corner, says, I once dreamt my sandals walked off without me. Next day I tripped over a senator. There's a moment of stunned silence. Was it a real senator? He was too shiny to be fake. There's gentle teasing, but also respect. Myths are woven into the fabric of the city, like chalk lines on worn marble. You're just as likely to hear someone invoke Minerva when choosing bread as you are during battle. A quiet debate sparks near the steam vent. Did Romulus and Remus really get raised by a wolf? Maybe not a wolf, one man argues. Perhaps just a very hairy woman. The others consider this with philosophical gravity. Someone adds, explains the howling. One fringe theory bather introduces a personal claim. He's descended from a siren. That's why I sing well in the bath, he insists, humming tunelessly. Historians have no evidence, but I feel it. The others nod. Feelings count here. A bather lounging on a bench props himself up and says, there's a snake in my garden that only appears when I forget my mother's birthday. Another suggests it's not a snake. It's guilt. The conversation slides effortlessly into symbology, then back into laughter when someone suggests the snake might just be a nosy neighbor in a bedsheet. And then come the rituals. You listen, eyes half closed, as someone explains how she ties red threads around her olive jars to keep out bad spirits. Do they work? Someone asks. She smiles. None of my olives have turned into demons, yet. A man shares that he once buried a chicken feather under his neighbor's doorstep after a dispute. He hasn't spoken to me since. Because of the spell? Because I yelled at his cat, but still. The steam shifts. Someone tosses in a handful of bay leaves onto the hot stones, and suddenly the room smells like a poet's pantry. The air sharpens, and so does the storytelling. You hear a soft tale of a woman who swears she saw a dryad in her fig tree, whispering good fortune through rustling leaves. Another bath-goer counters, that's just the wind. The first woman smiles, that's what the dryad wants you to think. Someone proposes that the gods now take subtler forms. Not lightning bolts or talking bulls. Now it's spilled wine, broken sandals, or being late to your own feast. Or when someone eats your figs and blames the cat, adds a man with a haunted expression. A chorus of awe surrounds him like a gentle jury. Historians still don't know where myth ends and ritual begins. someone mumbles while using a towel as a pillow. But I know this. My neighbor only burns incense when her husband lies, and the house has smelled like cinnamon for weeks. You lie back and let the steam cover you like a second skin, listening to stories that drift between the absurd and the almost true. There's something oddly reassuring about hearing others debate whether Pegasus needed horseshoes or if Jupiter had a favorite bakery. As you drift in and out of the murmured mist, someone whispers, "I once prayed to Fortuna and found 2 denarii in my sandal." Divine sign? Someone asks. Or just bad housekeeping? The steam room sighs. The myths float, swirl, and settle. You rise slowly, your joints soothed, your mind full of ghosts, gods, and the comforting absurdity of believing in something mysterious. As you pass a final group, one man is trying to explain that the constellation Orion is actually just a map to a secret tavern. Someone is scribbling it into the condensation on the wall. You exit with a smile. The steam clings to you for a moment longer, as if it too is reluctant to let go of the story. You walk slowly now, as though the stories have added weight to your limbs, a pleasant heaviness that only deepens as you wander into the next room. The air is cooler again, perfumed gently with myrrh and whatever oil the attendants were giving out by the ladle earlier. Something floral and faintly spicy, like a summer garden after rain. This chamber isn't for bathing exactly. It's the grooming area where bathers oil, scrape, perfume, primp, and whisper about beauty others and their own. You ease into a low marble bench beside a mirror that's more polished bronze than reflective glass. You catch the ghost of your own face, damp and pink from steam. Not bad, honestly. A little flushed. You look like someone who's survived 3 different oils and emerged victorious. "Did you see Fulvia's eyeliner yesterday?" Someone breathes beside you. So thick her husband nearly fell into it. There's a chorus of delicate giggles. This is the room of quiet judgments and gentle admiration, where hair is examined like scrollwork and skin is discussed with the same passion reserved for temple marble. You notice a group of women gathered around a friend, whose braids are being redone by a patient attendant. "She's trying the Egyptian twist today," someone says, nodding. "All the rage since that Cleopatra statue tour." Another adds, "Historians still debate how much Cleopatra actually influenced Roman fashion, but I'd trust her with my eyebrows." You can't help but watch the hair ritual. The strands are pulled into loops, coiled like cinnamon, pinned with delicate bone clasps that look almost edible. The whole room smells of lavender and olive with a faint finish of beeswax. Someone nearby is applying a face paste with a small wooden spatula. "Crushed pearls and vinegar," she explains to her companion. "Softens the skin or ruins it. It's a toss-up." A man nearby is attempting to wax his arms with what appears to be melted resin and raw determination. He hisses, "Why does beauty have to feel like punishment?" An older bather nods knowingly. "That means it's working." A young woman applies rouge made from crushed berries. "Natural," she murmurs, "unlike my aunt's face last Saturnalia." Her friend nearly chokes on a date. Then comes the perfume debate. One man insists that myrrh is the scent of gods. "Myrrh is for funerals," someone counters. "Cinnamon oil is for lovers." A third leans in, barely audible. "I once met a woman who wore garlic oil as perfume." "How bold," murmurs someone else. "How single," murmurs another. They chuckle, but not unkindly. Someone across the room is discussing skin tone with alarming specificity. "You want golden, not sunburnt, like a late peach." Another voice adds, "Or like a marble that's been politely toasted." You try not to laugh. The metaphors get stranger the longer you listen. A man with eyebrows so carefully shaped they might be imperial property is showing off a new depilatory powder. "Made with ant eggs and bat ash," he says proudly. "Works wonders." "Smells like regret," mutters a neighbor. You learn that body hair in Rome is an ongoing conversation. Not too much, not too little. A balanced plucking, if you will. Some even bleach their arm hair with goat milk and ash. You don't ask how. You already know the answer is with a towel and a prayer. Historians still can't agree whether Romans bleached their teeth using urine, someone announces too casually. The room goes briefly silent. Then, as if by agreement, no one mentions it again. A group of men is now examining a friend's new sandals, which have been dyed a fashionable shade of plum. Chic, someone murmurs, screams, I'm modest but festive. Another counters, they scream, I got caught in a grape vat. The owner beams either way. Then there's the soft critique. You're wearing too much coal, someone gently tells a companion. It looks like your eyes are preparing for battle. Perfect, she replies. They are. You sit still as a bath attendant dabs your temples with rose oil, muttering something about balance and fortune. You don't care. It smells like vacation. Another pours a ladle of water into a shallow basin and begins grinding sandalwood into a paste. There's something meditative in the motion. You watch as the paste thickens, then gets passed around for dabbing, dotting, and sniffing. Someone whispers, it's supposed to attract favorable dreams. You apply a bit to your wrist, can't hurt. A woman nearby starts describing her morning routine. I wake with the sun, rinse with milk, dry with rose petals, oil my arms, sing to my mirror, and greet each day like a blessing. There's a beat, and if I oversleep, I skip to the oil. Someone else tells a story of a man who tried to bleach his beard to match a statue of Apollo. He ended up green. Divine, someone nods. As the room shifts and resettles, a small group begins trading beauty superstitions. Never trim your hair on Saturn's day. Apply oil from left to right only. Don't wear coral when Mercury is in retrograde. What's Mercury? He's fast. You lean your head back and let the chatter blur again, like wind through tall grass. The rhythm of compliments, questions, and gentle vanity is oddly relaxing. No one here is cruel. The gossip is warm, affectionate, like a friend checking your toga for spinach. A bather stretches luxuriously and says, I dream of a day where I wake flawless without effort. You dream of death, replies someone. They both laugh. You rise eventually, glancing at your reflection once more. Bronze still blurry, but you think your skin glows a little brighter. Or maybe it's the oil, or the jokes, or the confidence of surviving a room full of bat ash and plum sandals. You leave slowly, passing a woman adding tiny dried flowers to her bath oil. For softness, she says to no one in particular. You believe her. And just as you reach the exit, a last voice whispers from the mist, true beauty is knowing which oil not to share. You smile. That sounds about right. The scent of sandalwood and spiced oil lingers in your hair as you step into a different kind of warmth, one not from hot stones or thick steam, but from conversation that stretches across continents and climates. This chamber is tucked near the edge of the bathhouse, quieter but not silent. The walls here bear faint frescoes of ships and animals with suspiciously human eyes. There are maps, half-sketched and outdated, scratched into plaster with careless pride. You sit down on a stone bench next to a trio of bathers speaking softly about places you've never heard of, and possibly never will. Welcome to the gentle world of Roman travel gossip. Armenia, says a sun-wrinkled man with a dramatic sigh, is very cold, but the bread is warm enough to forgive it. The others nod slowly. One adds, Parthians are terrible dinner guests. They never sit still. The tone is dreamy, less National Geographic, more half-remembered postcards from old campaigns, trade routes, and cousin-in-law adventures. You lean back as someone begins listing spices from India, none of which you recognize except maybe cinnamon, and even that's debatable. They have one that numbs your tongue and makes you forget your debts. I bought a whole jar. Another bather interrupts. That's just wine. The conversation shifts to Egypt. A man who's clearly never been there insists the Nile runs backward. Someone corrects him gently. It just flows south to north. The first man frowns. That sounds backward to me. A woman sitting nearby begins describing the silk she once saw brought in from the east. So fine it slipped between your fingers like water, woven by worms, they say. Someone else squints. Worms don't weave. These do, she replies, as though explaining poetry to a tree stump. Historians still argue whether the Romans truly understood silk production or if they just assumed it involved enchanted insects. Either way, silk was expensive. People pretended not to want it and then tried to drape themselves in it anyway. The chatter moves to Africa. Someone claims their uncle traded for ivory with tribes so remote they used giraffe songs to tell time. Giraffes don't sing, says a skeptic. That's what makes it so rare, the man insists. Everyone nods politely, the way people do when faced with charming nonsense. Someone mentions a salt mine in Numidia where the workers sing as they dig. They believe the salt listens, she says almost reverently, and sings back when the room is empty. The others consider this. No one laughs. Next come stories of Britannia. Cold, wet, everything smells of moss, mutters a legionary with haunted eyes. But their cloaks are warm and their beer makes you forget how much mud you're wearing. Do they really paint themselves blue? Someone asks. Only on holidays, a beat. And when they're angry, a soft hum of appreciation. You ask a question about Gaul and someone perks up immediately. Excellent cheeses, terrible poetry. A man nods beside him. I once heard a Gallic bard rhyme tree with battle cry. It changed me. Then come the sea stories. A merchant begins recounting his journey to Cyrene, where the water shines like coined silver and the wind smells of fennel. I traded linen for a basket of seashells and left with a goat, he says. Best deal of my life. You still have the goat? No, but the shells are lovely. There's a quiet excitement in these half-truths. You realize travel gossip isn't about accuracy, it's about storytelling, about stitching together the edges of the world into a quilt of vaguely believable marvels. Someone beside you murmurs, "Did you hear about the tribe that communicates by blinking?" Another replies, "I married into that tribe. How's it going?" We mostly just stare. A man with a deep tan and a cracked heel tells a tale of a desert so hot the sand sings. High, whining notes, like glass being polished. Could have been heat stroke, someone offers. Possibly, he admits, but I danced anyway. Historians still puzzle over how much early Roman knowledge of the Far East was trade-based and how much was just bathhouse embellishment. Looking around, the line is very blurry. One older woman recounts a tale of a red-haired warrior from the north who drank milk straight from a bear's paw. He said it made him strong, she adds. It also made him sneeze for 2 weeks. The conversation tilts to plants. Exotic fruit no one can name, roots that allegedly glow in moonlight, berries that only ripen when sung to. I tried to grow one, says a man with defeated eyes. It died listening to my voice. And then mythical animals. A bather insists she once saw a map with a monkey-faced lion in the corner. It guards the eastern trade routes. Another swears his cousin met a sea cow that tried to marry him. He declined, the man clarifies, respectfully. There's no cynicism here, only wonder, gently worn and passed hand to hand like warm bread. You begin to relax so deeply your fingers uncurl. Someone near you, clearly a retired sailor, is humming a tune. You don't know the words, but you imagine it's something about longing and salted dates. Someone else leans in and says, "You've got traveler's feet." What does that mean? Calloused but curious. You sit with that. As the chatter fades to a comfortable hum, you close your eyes and imagine all the places you haven't been. Silk roads, salt deserts, singing sand, blue-painted warriors with cheese and bad rhymes. You haven't left Rome, you may never leave Rome, but in this bathhouse you've just traveled the world by towel. You follow a ripple of sound down a hallway, part echo, part melody, and find yourself drifting toward one of the lesser-known pleasures of the Roman bathhouse. The music. Not the professional sort with lyres and marble amphitheaters, but the soft, slightly off-key, deeply heartfelt music of the people. The kind that wafts between steam columns and oil pots like a breeze that forgot where it was going. This chamber isn't marked by a sign, but by the gentle tap of fingers on clay cups, the low drone of someone humming a tune from memory, and the casual way bathers begin to sing as if they've forgotten they're not alone. You slip inside. The room is dim, the light flickering off water-stained walls. There are a few instruments here, rudimentary drums, a flute with a missing reed, and a kithara whose strings have been lovingly replaced with dyed horsehair. One man leans against the wall, strumming it softly, notes fluttering out like shy birds. Historians still argue whether bathhouses encouraged music formally, someone whispers, but clearly no one told him to stop. The player nods in rhythm, eyes closed, lips barely moving. He's not performing, he's remembering. You settle beside a woman who's tapping two seashells together, creating a delicate clicking that somehow harmonizes with the humming. "Used to be a dancer," she says without looking at you. "Still dance, in my knees." Someone nearby starts a tune, low and slightly crooked, like a lullaby that tripped on its own hem. "Oh, fig of mine, oh, honeyed kiss, why must you ripen when I miss?" The room falls into that rare silence where everyone pretends not to listen too hard. And then comes the gossip, because of course, even here, even now, the music world has its rumors. "I heard Valeria's lyre teacher fled to Crete after she insulted his timing. She insulted his hair, too. Well, that was justified. Remember Marcius, the one who sang hymns to Venus in the wrong key? Still got married twice." They laugh, a lazy rustle of amusement like papyrus in a breeze. You learn that music in Rome was both everywhere and nowhere. Played at feasts, sung in temples, hummed while cleaning sandals, but rarely written down. It slipped between lives, memorable only to those who heard it. Someone starts playing the panpipes badly. They wheeze like a confused goose. Everyone turns slowly. "First time?" someone asks. "Yes," the player says proudly. "I learned from a goat." "Well," says a man reclining with a cloth over his eyes, "that explains the tempo." Laughter bubbles up again, warm and loose. Even the bad music is welcome here. It's all part of the experience, like slipping into lukewarm water and pretending you don't smell like fermented fig. A group of younger bathers starts gently tapping out rhythms with wet fingers on the tiled bench. One of them chants softly, "Strike the stone and hear the beat. Call the gods with sandaled feet. Steam our sky and soap our sun. Sing until the bath is done." Applause soft but sincere. Someone beside you mutters, "That was either poetic genius or a cry for help." "Both," comes the reply. You catch snippets of stories. A singer who once seduced an entire villa with a single chorus. A flute player who trained by serenading his chickens. A man whose singing voice was so sweet that bees followed him through the forum. One bather claims he once saw a senator cry during a harp solo. Tried to blame the incense smoke, but he dabbed his eyes with cypress leaves. "That's dramatic," someone notes. "Exactly." A woman starts singing a lullaby in a language you don't recognize. It lilts like a boat on a gentle river. When she finishes, no one claps. The silence is too soft to break. Historians aren't sure how many regional melodies were absorbed into Roman culture, someone says nearby. But songs like that, they stick. Someone in the corner, an older man with an oil-streaked tunic, is beatboxing with his mouth full of figs. "It's terrible. It's wonderful," you grin. The room shifts, music trailing off like steam in a breeze. People begin to stand, stretch, wipe down their instruments, or hand them off with quiet chuckles. One young man carefully places his kithara in a towel. "It's out of tune," he sighs. "So am I." You rise, brushing fig crumbs from your knee, and prepare to leave. A voice calls out, "What's your favorite song?" You pause, think. Probably the one about olives and heartbreak. There's a beat. Then someone starts to hum a melody you think might just be that, or maybe it's about figs. The line between the two is blurry. You walk out slowly, the rhythm of the shells still tapping behind you. The tune follows you into the hallway like a sleepy friend who doesn't know when to say goodbye. And as you pass under the archway, you hear someone quietly sing, "Oh, sandal lost. Oh, soap once near slash, return to me or disappear." You whisper Grammy material and drift onward. By now, the bathhouse feels like a second skin, soft, steamy, predictably unpredictable. Every corner you turn reveals a new kind of whisper, a different tone of gentle absurdity. You hear light footsteps echoing around the curved corridor ahead and follow the familiar trail of quiet excitement, this time toward the paelstra. The paelstra is the Roman version of a gymnasium, though calling it that would be a disservice to its gentle chaos. You step out into the open-air courtyard where afternoon sun filters lazily through archways. The floor is swept smooth, with a few polished stones placed here and there to trip only the most boastful of athletes. And oh, the chatter, the athletes, if one can call them that, are everywhere. Some actually practice, oil glistening on their shoulders as they toss light balls made from stitched leather, or wrestle with the soft lethargy of people who had a large lunch. Others, however, are fully invested in the unofficial sport of bathhouse gossip, talking about the athletes. "That S. Publius," says a towel-clad spectator to your left, nodding at a bronzed figure stretching one leg far too dramatically. "Won 5 races, ate a pigeon before each one for luck." "That explains the smell," someone else murmurs. You ease onto a bench beneath a fig tree, half in sun, half in shadow, and take in the atmosphere. On one side of the courtyard, a man is practicing discus throws with absolutely no discus. "Visualization," he explains, "or budget cuts." Behind him, 2 women watch a pair of young men attempt a wrestling match that mostly resembles enthusiastic hugging. One woman mutters, "He's only here because he looks good in linen." "Better than my last husband," the other replies. "He looked like boiled cabbage in everything." The athletes are beloved in a way that's part reverence, part roast. Someone whispers about a charioteer who changed teams mid-season, traitor, while another chuckles about a retired gladiator now selling olive oil. Still flexes every time he pours. Historians still debate how popular athletes were compared to stage actors, someone says near you, idly fanning themselves. But both had scandal. Only one got cheered for falling over. A favorite local wrestler known as Rufus the Tender walks by. His name, you're told, is ironic. He once knocked out a man with a half-hearted shoulder bump. He now teaches toddlers how to stretch. "He grunts every time someone says figs," says a bystander. "Watch figs." Sure enough, a low grunt rumbles from Rufus like thunder from a sleepy cloud. One man on a bench claims he once raced against a famous Greek runner. "He beat me," he adds proudly, "but I distracted him with a coin toss halfway through." "Smart," someone nods. "Economic warfare." Nearby, 2 women admire a javelin thrower from behind their fans. "Excellent form. Shame about his poetry. I heard it causes rashes, just in the ears." The paelstra isn't just about the body, it's about persona. Athletes cultivate image like gladiators cultivate scars. There's one man who always oils his beard before practice. Another wears his championship sandals everywhere. They squeak audibly. "The sound of success," he says. A small boy scurries past with a tray of water jugs, trailing after a particularly smug-looking runner. "That's Marcus the Wind," says a voice nearby. "Fastest man in Rome." "Except when someone mentions taxes," another adds. Then he vanishes entirely. Someone is juggling 3 clay balls while arguing about diet. Figs in the morning, dates by noon, wine at dusk. You forgot olives. I never forget olives. The balls drop. In one corner, two wrestlers, likely brothers, are locked in a half-hearted match that involves more complaining than contact. He stepped on my toe. He called my knees bony. You do have bony knees. Their mother, sitting nearby with a strigil, sighs and mutters, "This is why I wanted musicians." A fringe rumor makes the rounds about an athlete who shaved his entire body to reduce drag. He tripped over a fly and blamed the wind, says one storyteller, claimed it was a tactical draft. Still won, another shrugs. Historians still wonder whether athletic nudity was truly embraced or just tolerated. Someone muses while examining a sandal for signs of pebble trauma. All I know is, my cousin tried it once and now refuses to sit near mirrors. A bath attendant strolls by with a tray of chilled cloths. One of the athletes takes one and immediately uses it to polish his biceps. Someone claps politely. "That's art," a voice whispers. You turn to watch a small, impromptu foot race start. The racers line up barefoot, surrounded by bored spectators eating grapes. One man yells, "Winner gets the last honey cake." The race begins. Everyone runs, even the spectators. The honey cake is gone before anyone finishes. As the courtyard calms again, the mood shifts back to its gentle pace. A few bathers fan themselves, others reapply oil. The sun dips slightly, the light turning golden. One man tries to juggle again, this time with dried plums. It goes poorly. He eats one. You rise from your bench as a final tale floats past. Did you hear about the swimmer who tried to race an actual dolphin? Did he win? No, but he got a trident to the foot. From the dolphin. From a fisherman, long story. You leave the Palestra smiling. Behind you, the quiet sounds of foot slaps on stone, of gossip, of gentle groaning from stretched limbs, all blend into a low, harmonious background hum. The athletes may come and go, but their reputations, eternal. Especially if they fall while oiling themselves. That always gets remembered. The air shifts again as you meander away from the Palestra. You pass under a low archway where a fresco of Venus riding a dolphin is fading gently from the wall, her gaze eternally amused. Beyond this, the tone of the bathhouse changes yet again, slower, softer. Here, the voices are more playful, the laughter a little higher pitched, the conversations distinctly fuzzy. You've arrived at what can only be described as the pet gossip zone. Yes, even in ancient Rome, pets were a big deal. And not just cats and dogs, though there are certainly plenty of those, purring beneath benches, curled into towel baskets, or shamelessly lapping at unattended bowls of olive scraps. But also parrots, monkeys, snakes, and at least one suspiciously plump dormouse currently napping in a sandal. You take a seat beside two older women discussing the logistics of teaching a parrot to curse politely. He says, "By Jupiter's sandals." Whenever someone sneezes, the owner explains, "It's a crowd pleaser." The other woman sighs, stroking a cat that may or may not belong to her. I tried training mine to chase mice. Instead, she judges me when I forget to oil my elbows. A few men nearby are swapping stories about exotic pets they've seen. One claims his cousin once owned a Nile crocodile named Balbus. Kept it in a fountain, terrible at fetch. Someone else chimes in, "Didn't Balbus end up in a senator's garden party soup?" A long pause. "Possibly, he always did love bouillabaisse." You lean back, watching a child attempt to walk a goose on a piece of twine. It's not going well. The goose, clearly in charge, leads the way. Historians still debate the role of animals in daily Roman life. Someone murmurs nearby, perhaps quoting a scroll or just enjoying their own voice. But anyone who's met a noblewoman's peacock knows they were basically family. Someone gestures to a nearby bird perched on a windowsill. That's Marius. He recites love poems at dawn and insults charioteers by noon. The bird caws sharply as if on cue. "See, the owner beams. He hates Team Green. You're told that pets aren't just pets here. They're conversation starters, fashion statements, mood barometers. A small, very fluffy dog passes by wearing a miniature laurel crown. His name's Emperor Sniffus, someone whispers reverently. Won't eat unless served on a bronze dish. I knew a senator like that, someone else quips. The gossip circles around to food, as it often does. My dormouse refuses stale walnuts now, a man says with a tired shake of his head. Had to soak them in honey for 15 minutes. She's worth it, adds his companion, scratching the little creature gently under its chin. Someone else tells the tale of a monkey that learned to untie sandal straps. Brought down 3 dinner parties, she adds with pride. We called him Chaos. A parrot screeches something from a ledge overhead. No one flinches. That's Julia's bird. He's rehearsing a play, someone explains. One woman tragedy about spilled wine and broken engagements. Art imitates life, another sighs. You feel something brush against your foot and look down to find a small tortoise crawling slowly beneath the bench. Its shell is painted with tiny vines and grapes. A note is tied to its back with twine. Don't step on me, I'm sensitive. The group near you shifts topics again, this time to animal omens. My dog barked at the eastern wall before my wedding, a woman says. Should have listened. Someone pats her shoulder sympathetically. Mine once sneezed during an eclipse. I wore garlic around my ankles for 3 weeks. Historians still argue whether Romans took animal behavior as seriously as official augury, someone says. But honestly, if my lizard starts pacing in circles, I cancel everything. There's something soothing about all this. The mild ridiculousness, the earnestness, the undeniable fact that Roman citizens, with all their conquests and togas, still cooed at sleepy animals and discussed fur quality like it was currency. One man tells a particularly dramatic story. My sister's ferret bit a tax collector. We thought she'd be fined. Instead, he complimented the ferret's bravery. The group chuckles. That's Rome, someone adds. Chaos with charisma. You listen as a boy describes how his family built a miniature couch for their pet dormouse. She lounges in it during storms. We all need that, someone nods. And then, as if to remind everyone who's really in charge, a cat climbs onto a warm stone ledge, stretches with the grace of a goddess, and lets out a yawn so powerful it silences the room for a beat. She is clearly royalty. No one says a word. Someone finally murmurs, "Do you think cats ever talk about us in their version of a bathhouse?" A long pause. If they do, someone replies, they're far crueler. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the tortoise now settled near your foot like a sleepy pebble. The pet room, it turns out, is a temple of its own, one of fur, feathers, claws, and gossip soft as a kitten's sigh. You exit to the sound of soft chirps, gentle mews, and a parrot dramatically shouting, "I never loved you anyway." Which, to be fair, may apply to several humans here too. You step away from the cooing parrots and perfumed lapdogs and head toward a slightly more clinical stretch of the bathhouse. The soundscape shifts, less giggling and chirping, more thoughtful hums and low murmurs of caution. This is the section where ailments are confessed, scrapes are debated, and everyone suddenly becomes an expert on how to fix whatever it is your elbow is doing. Welcome to the unofficial health clinic of the Roman baths, where no one is entirely a doctor, but everyone has a theory. You ease onto a padded bench next to a man gently examining his big toe. "It's not purple today," he says proudly, as if speaking of a well-behaved child. "Yesterday it looked like Bacchus stepped on it in a rage. Try vinegar," his neighbor advises without looking up. "Or boiled cabbage water, drink it, then apologize to the toe." This is how the conversations begin, quiet admissions of pain, met with soothing suggestions that range from charmingly outdated to outright mystical. A woman across from you swears by sleeping with a warm brick on her stomach. "Balances the spleen," she says, or keeps cats away, both useful. A man with a mild sunburn is being dabbed with something minty. Pounded cucumber peel with a hint of goat's milk, the applier explains. Cool as a northern breeze. Historians still argue whether these remedies were medically effective or simply ritual comfort, murmurs someone from the next bench while balancing a pebble on their forehead to align their inner winds. Another patient bather asks for advice on snoring. Sleep on your left side, drink warm wine with pine sap, and avoid envy, comes the reply. Envy clogs the nose. Someone nearby has a mild rash. Must have been the figs, he says dramatically, or that suspicious soap I borrowed from the man who smells like leeks. That's not soap, someone whispers. That's actual leeks. You observe a cluster of regulars trading balms and recipes for ointments. One woman unwraps a small cloth bundle and reveals a smudge of thick greenish paste. For sore muscles, made from crushed bay leaves, honey, and silence. How do you get silence? From a screaming child, after they fall asleep. Another shares a leech anecdote. Used one on my wrist last week. Arm went numb, but so did my complaints. That's progress, someone nods. You realize the bathhouse isn't just a place to soak. It's a place to heal, or at least pretend to. The heat, the oils, the endless talking, it all has its own medicinal rhythm. A hunched older man lifts his tunic just enough to reveal a wrapped ankle. Stepped on a philosopher, he explains. He wasn't marked, you see. You should have oiled first, says his friend. Always oil before unexpected stepping. Someone shares a remedy for insomnia, warm goat's milk mixed with crushed poppy seeds and a dramatic story told slowly before bed. The story's essential, she insists. I once fell asleep during my own telling. A very serious-looking man holds up a dried plant. Wormhood, he says, fixes indigestion, bad breath, and awkward silences. Does it work? I haven't had silence in weeks. Then comes the tale of the man who claimed figs cured everything. He once rubbed fig paste on his bald spot and tried to convince people it grew back. Did it? Only his eyebrows. Historians still puzzle over the overlap between culinary herbs and medicinal ones. A towel-wrapped scholar mutters while drawing a chart on the steam-covered wall. Basically, if you can chew it, someone thinks it cures hiccups. A quiet group discusses dreams. If you dream of rain, one says, you'll have clear skin. If you dream of pigs, another adds, change your pillow. Why? Because pigs don't belong in your bed. Someone walks in clutching their side. Cramps, they groan. A nearby elder hands them a tiny clay charm. Hold this and curse at your reflection, loudly. The pain will leave out of embarrassment. You close your eyes as someone softly recites a chant to soothe headaches. By the olives crushed. By the fig leaves torn. Let the ache go out. Like sandals worn. It's nonsense, and yet you feel better already. There's a soft debate about medicinal wine. One woman insists on adding wormwood, another prefers honey, and a third swears by garlic. Why garlic? To keep my neighbors away when I'm ill. Effective. One of the fringe theories making the rounds today is the belief that beeswax under the armpits keeps fevers away. But only if it's from bees born on a Tuesday, someone insists. Otherwise, it just smells. You sip from a shared jug of mint-infused water and feel your sinuses do something strange. It's working, the jug's owner says proudly. Or killing me slowly, you reply, he nods. Either way, it's progress. Another bather demonstrates a curious stretching pose meant to realign the gallbladder. But that's not where the gallbladder is, someone says. Exactly, comes the reply. It never sees it coming. You hear murmurs about sea salt scrubs, crushed olive pit poultices, and someone who once healed a sore throat by singing to a fig tree. The fig tree died, they admit, but my throat, divine. And as you prepare to rise, a final whisper reaches you. True healing is 90% belief and 10% hot towels. You nod, this sounds like medicine to you. You leave the room feeling, maybe not cured, but definitely soothed. You smell faintly of time and possibly hope. The health wing of the bathhouse might not have a license, but it has something better. Storytelling, steam, and enough fig-based remedies to survive anything short of a lion attack. Even that, someone claims, can be soothed with goat's milk, if the goat cooperates. By now, you're steeped in so much steam and story that time feels wonderfully elastic. Was it morning when you arrived? Late afternoon? Or some mythic hour reserved only for bathhouses and dreams? You no longer care. You follow the quiet buzz of curiosity into a cooler room, dimly lit with a faint whiff of beeswax and gossip. A place where voices drop to a delicious whisper. This is where they talk about the imperial family. Not loudly, of course, never formally. But here, away from the scrutiny of the forum and the judgment of marble busts, Romans relax into one of their favorite national pastimes, softly speculating about the private lives of emperors and their extended households. You take a seat near a man whispering through the steam. They say Emperor Antoninus brushes his teeth with powdered coral. Someone nearby gasps. That's outrageous. A pause. Where can I get some? You don't know if it's true. No one does. But that's the charm. Every imperial tidbit here is half fact, half theater, and three-quarters audacity. They say his wife only wears one sandal indoors, someone else offers. Superstition, or bunions, or protest, perhaps it's political. Historians still argue whether Faustina the Elder was subtly rebellious or just had a lopsided walk. You nod gravely. Either explanation is perfectly valid. A woman to your left fans herself slowly. Did you hear that the emperor's niece once ordered a sculpture of herself made entirely of beeswax? Why beeswax? So it could melt dramatically if someone betrayed her. A collective murmur of impressed disbelief fills the room like incense. Honestly, someone near the wall murmurs, half of them act like they're in a tragedy, and the other half think they're writing it. There are, of course, the classics. Nero's love of theatrical performance, Caligula's rumored horse senator, which still prompts heated debates, and the ever-popular theory that Augustus once banned the color chartreuse because it clashed with his aura. Aura? His vibe, someone clarifies with great authority. A man in the corner says he once knew someone who brushed elbows with a palace cook. Said the emperor eats figs sideways. Sideways? Horizontally, like a fish. No one questions it. This is the kind of room where fig orientation is a valid topic of imperial intrigue. Someone else brings up Hadrian's beard. It hides a scar, they whisper, or a secret tattoo. Maybe both, someone gasps. A scar shaped like a tattoo of a scar. You nearly choke on your breath. This is the greatest room in the entire empire. A bath attendant glides in with a tray of chilled towels. No one stops talking. The gossip merely lowers in pitch like a choir rehearsing for a secret performance. Someone grabs a towel and murmurs, I heard the empress bathes in milk. Goat, not cow, very particular. Her skin is radiant, someone agrees. You hear whispers about Lucilla, Marcus Aurelius's daughter. She allegedly trained a hawk to peck anyone who brought her bad poetry. That's efficient. Also romantic in a dangerous sort of way. One person swears that a young prince was caught rearranging the forum statues to make himself taller by comparison. Did it work? Only in the shadows, but those are the most flattering. Another adds that one emperor had his personal astrologer fired for predicting rain on a sunny day. That's just good management, someone shrugs, or fear of umbrellas. Historians still debate how much power imperial siblings held behind closed doors, someone says sagely. But I know this, if I had a brother who wore leopard print sandals, I'd exile him to Crete. More laughter. The gossip winds through the room like silk through fingers. Some tales are innocent, others delightfully petty. Did you hear that Domitian used to polish his own mirrors? That's humbling. No, it's suspicious. What was he trying to see? You smile as two women begin gently arguing over which emperor had the best fashion sense. Trajan had the tunic flow of a god, one insists, but his sandals lacked tension. Nonsense, the other counters. Tiberius knew how to wear a belt like it meant something. You drift to another cluster of bathers comparing imperial pets. I heard Augustus had a pet eel, named Lucius. He trained it to circle the bath before dinner. Very hygienic, unless it bit. Someone claims that Vespasian once cured a blind man by spitting on him. That's not healing, that's hope, someone responds. Or high-pressure hydration. The stories grow more absurd and more wonderful. An older man recalls hearing that Livia, wife of Augustus, once paid someone to smile at her enemies until they left the room. That's power, he adds, stretching his legs. Weaponized pleasantness. Someone else has a theory that the entire imperial family rotates lookalikes during public events. How else do they smile for 8 hours straight? A murmur of agreement. Teeth fatigue is real. You hear about palace corridors filled with lavender smoke, senatorial banquets that ended in gentle song, and a rumor that one empress believed sneezing was a sign of divine disapproval. She wore feathers in her sandals to prevent it, someone says, deadpan. You don't know where fact ends and fiction begins. No one does. That's what makes it all so sleepily thrilling. Eventually, the room quiets. Someone yawns. A few bathers slip out, sandals softly slapping the tile like tiny applauding fish. You sit a moment longer, letting the last rumor settle in your brain like a warm olive dropped into honey. The emperor has a secret tunnel that leads directly to a fig orchard. You nod, you believe it, or at least you want to. Because here in the bathhouse, truth doesn't need proof. It just needs good timing and a quiet voice. You leave the imperial whispers behind, letting them fade like perfume into the arches, and find yourself trailing the scent of something more cerebral, like old scrolls, sandal leather, and the distant sound of someone gently overthinking things. You're drawn toward a quieter wing of the bathhouse now. Fewer attendants, fewer towels, more thoughtful silence punctuated by occasional hem-s and yes, but what if? This is the realm of the bathhouse philosophers. Not the dramatic kind who shout in the forum while gesturing wildly at pigeons, but the low-voiced thinkers who prefer their wisdom steeped in steam and served with figs. You spot them at once, older bathers reclining on warmed benches, their towels perfectly arranged, their expressions somewhere between enlightened and asleep. You take a seat beside a man tracing circles on the stone bench with his finger. Is it more virtuous, he asks the air, to share your oil or to pretend you forgot it? A woman across from him replies, depends if the oil is scented. A murmur of agreement passes through the room like a soft breeze. These are the Stoics, the Epicureans, the Cynics. Although, let's be honest, most are just here for the gossip with extra syllables. Someone sighs deeply. I argued with my cousin about fate. He says everything is predetermined. I say, then why did you forget my birthday? Historians still argue whether Stoicism included birthday etiquette, someone mutters. The conversations flow like warm olive oil, slow, rich, with a subtle burn. You listen to a man explain that time is a spiral, not a line. That's why I keep making the same mistake with lentils. Another woman insists that the universe is a bathhouse. We enter, we steam, we exit, hopefully cleaner. Unless you borrowed someone else's sponge, someone murmurs. A young man, clearly a novice, pipes up. If I doubt everything, does that include this conversation? A pause. Especially this conversation, a philosopher replies. And your sandals. The group nods solemnly. Someone begins a soft rant about socks. Socks separate us from the wisdom of the floor, but they keep the floor clean. At what cost? This philosophical volley continues for several minutes. Historians still debate the actual footwear practices in bathhouses. A middle-aged woman offers, holding her sandals like sacred scrolls. But I know this, damp socks are the enemy of the soul. You notice someone reading an actual scroll, or pretending to. Every few lines, he pauses and sighs as though absorbing eternal truth. You lean in to catch the title on the ethical use of towel hooks, profound. A debate sparks about pleasure. Is the joy of figs lesser than the joy of learning? One man asks. Figs don't argue, someone counters, and they're seasonal. So is wisdom, says a third. Another bather makes the claim that virtue can be measured by how one handles mild discomfort. Like cold tiles? Someone asks. Exactly, or weak tea, or sandals that squeak in public. One philosopher proposes that bathhouses are ideal for ethical reflection. No distractions, no urgent news, just heat, humidity, and humility. Someone nearby snorts. Last week you slipped on soap and cursed Neptune. That was humility in action. The room settles again into that perfect mix of contemplation and barely concealed snark. You watch someone idly stack 3 olives on the edge of the bench. Balance, he says. Also snack prep. A woman leans back and announces, the gods gave us wisdom so we could forget it at the best possible moment. Someone raises a fig in salute. You drift into a conversation about death, not grim but curious. When I die, says one elderly man, I hope it's during a nap in the caldarium, let the heat carry me. I want to go during a good joke, says another, preferably one about figs. There's something deeply Roman about that, wanting the final moment to be warm and witty. Someone brings up legacy. We build monuments, we carve names, but truly we live on in bathhouse gossip. And misquoted scrolls, someone adds. Don't forget those. Historians still debate whether Roman philosophers influenced daily life or simply made it more interesting, murmurs a man stroking his beard with alarming intensity. But I say, if my thoughts are quoted by a sponge seller in 200 years, I've done my job. The conversation turns to dreams. Last night I dreamt I argued with a goat about justice. Who won? The goat. They often do. Someone starts drafting a new philosophy on the back of a napkin, something about towel sharing as a metaphor for civic virtue. If I dry with your towel and you with mine, are we not united by fabric and sweat? Or at least confused, someone replies, which is close. You stretch your legs, warmed more by ideas than temperature. This is what the bathhouse offers, not just relaxation, but reflection with a wink. As you rise to leave, someone stops you. Do you believe in fate? Sometimes. That's the correct answer, he nods, satisfied. Another adds, whatever path brought you here, it was the right one. And then, unless you're the one who took my sandal. You are not, probably. You exit the room with your towel wrapped tighter than necessary and a head full of gentle debates, imaginary goats, and the lingering question. Is a dry sponge truly empty or full of possibility? You leave the philosophers behind, still debating fig metaphors and towel ethics, and step into a quieter, cooler corridor, one that signals the end of the circuit. You've passed through steam and song, scandal and sandals, and now, like all good Romans, you arrive at the exit not with haste, but with a slow sigh. This part of the bathhouse is where goodbyes happen, though no one ever seems in a rush to make them. You drift into a chamber where bathers linger just a little too long, drying their hair, sipping watered wine, and discussing absolutely nothing with the utmost sincerity. Someone beside you is examining a grape like it holds the secrets of the Republic. Do you peel yours? She asks her neighbor. Only if I trust the company, he replies. You nod to yourself. Seems fair. This room doesn't hum like the others. It exudes contentment. The kind of hush that only comes when people have said all they needed to, whether it was true or not. A man stands by the doorway, adjusting the folds of his tunic for the 5th time. "If I leave now," he says to no one in particular, "I'll have to return to my family." "Try leaving tomorrow," someone advises, "or fake a mild ankle sprain." Someone is brushing oil from their arms with the flat edge of a strigil slowly, as though every stroke is a farewell. "Goodbye, caldarium," he says softly. "Farewell, sweet soap." His friend adds, "I shall remember you, foot basin in the corner that was never quite warm enough." A woman is slowly braiding her damp hair and chatting with an attendant who's clearly heard the same story 6 times this week. "He says his sandal broke, so he couldn't visit. I say sandals don't fail without warning." "Perhaps it was a metaphor," the attendant replies, eyes half shut. You recline for a moment beside a half-eaten tray of figs, their juice soaking into a towel like spilled gossip. "Historians still wonder why figs were always present during farewells," someone says. "But clearly they comfort the soul." You eat one. It does. Someone else murmurs a toast. "To the towel that was never found, may it dry the heavens." You raise your fig in solidarity. The goodbyes are endless here, not because people are emotional, but because they are thorough. "Remember to oil your elbows," a woman tells her friend, "and never trust a man with symmetrical sandals. Too tidy, too calculated." Another group is trading final comments on today's Bathhouse highlights. "The philosopher with the goat dream? Inspired. The monkey who stole olives? A legend. The gossip about the Empress's beeswax statue? True or not, I'll repeat it at dinner." A teenager leans over and sighs. "Why do we even leave?" An older bather replies, "So we can come back tomorrow and talk about how much we miss it." A man gestures at the ceiling, which glows with the light of a low Roman afternoon. "The sky agrees," he says. "See, it's the same shade as warmed olive oil. The bathhouse is everywhere." You adjust your towel one final time, an act that feels ceremonial now. Around you, farewells are traded with affection and absurdity. "Walk carefully. Don't trip on philosophy. May your sandals find their true pairing." Someone wraps a small clay charm in cloth and gives it to their friend. "For your next visit," she says, "to protect against towel theft and awkward silences." So basically a miracle charm. Obviously. One man recites a farewell poem with full theatrical flair. "O tile beneath, so smooth, so damp. O oil of lavender, subtle and vamp. O towel once lost, now gently frayed. We part but only to reconvene, cleaner and less delayed." Scattered applause, some actual tears, mostly from laughter. You finally stand and begin walking toward the outer arch, where the hum of the city waits beyond. A breeze carries the scent of olives and warm stone. Someone ahead turns back and says, "Same time tomorrow." Someone else nods. "Bring your best rumor." You pass one last bench where a man is slowly packing his sandals with solemn care. "The world beyond has fewer figs," he mutters, "and far more paperwork." And as you cross the final threshold, one last voice drifts after you. "If anyone finds my sponge, tell it I forgive it." And now, as the bathhouse fades behind you, its walls echoing with laughter, fig-scented sighs, and stories too strange not to be true, your steps slow. The stone beneath your feet cools. The air grows still. The voices, once buzzing and bright, soften into murmurs, like memories on the edge of sleep. You feel the weight of the day begin to ease from your shoulders, as if each tale you heard, each gentle joke, has drawn some small thread of tension away from you. The world is quieter now, slower, kind. Imagine you are still wrapped in your towel, still warm from the caldarium, your skin carrying the faint trace of rose oil and sun. The sandals on your feet feel light, like you could float, like maybe you never need to return to the noise outside the arch. You could stay here, or carry this feeling with you wherever you are. Let the last echoes of fig-based wisdom and towel philosophy drift gently through your thoughts. Let them settle like steam on the skin. There is no need to hold them tightly. They'll find you again when needed. The world can wait. The rumors will keep. The sponge will forgive you. For now, just rest. Let your breath slow. Let your eyes drift closed. You've made it through the bathhouse. Clean in body, calm in spirit, and wrapped always in stories.